if the world decided that it was going to go full tilt on all of its plans to remove everything to, solar, wind, batteries, the whole lot, there just is not enough copper anywhere on planet Earth, nowhere near enough copper to achieve all of that. So it's not possible to achieve it.
Well, as I said earlier, this idea of net zero, it is not achievable.
Yeah.
The resources aren't there. They just aren't.
So what would you say is the number one issue?
The number one, our food production, soil quality, degradation of soils, drinking water.
But we can't produce enough of our own energy supplies. And people are so caught up in this whole thing of shutting down coal and shutting down oil, petroleum.
If I were advising the current federal government or the next federal government or the next state government, I would be saying to government, get rid of the climate change ministry. When our energy minister says, everyone knows renewables are the cheapest form of energy, he's lying because he's using the word renewables. Because electricity and electricity generation is a very specific thing.
Only a couple of months ago, they were talking about clearing 700 acres of bushland in Queensland to put windmills up.
Yes. Yeah, you're killing the environment to save it.
Yes. How does that work? So welcome to this next edition of the Masculine Intelligence Podcast. Today I got something really good for you and hopefully challenging. I'm sitting down with a very old friend, Greg Mirabella. Greg and I went to school together. We played footy together. He was a pretty awesome fullback. And also, I always knew a very intellectually switched on person. Now, Greg's got a great history. He's an engineer. He's a politician, and he's also a farmer, former state president of the Liberal Party in Victoria, and somebody who's got a lot of fantastic perspectives around what's really going on with this whole thing of environmental calamity, green energy, renewables. This is a topic that I'm pretty passionate about. I remember reading Judith Curry's book, and she said something that really stuck. She said, when you mix science with science, you get science. When you mix politics with politics, you get politics. And when you mix science with politics, you get politics. So, Greg, welcome to the podcast and bloody good to see you, mate.
Yeah, thanks very much, John. You haven't changed a bit.
Yeah, except the feel of the curls are gone, yeah? So, tell me, mate, you're living up near Wangaratta, you're on the land. How long have you been up there?
20 years.
Go on. And what moved you up there?
I got married to someone who was local.
Gotcha. I've got a lot of good friends in Wangaratta. It's it's so funny, isn't it? There's something about that town. It's got a sort of romantic connection. So, mate, you've got some great viewpoints on the whole environment thing, and we were talking just before, and you were saying that when you really look at what's going on in the world with the explosion of human population and resource use, the real problems are perhaps not being addressed.
That's right, John. When someone asks me, are you a climate believer or denier? My response is always, I can't answer the question because I don't accept the premise of the question. Mm-hmm. That's a political, climate change is a political construct.
Yeah. Any
researcher, any scientist looking at what you would sort of broadly frame the issue as would be looking at, what are we actually studying here? What is the underlying problem? And the hypothesis would start with something like, humanity's numbers and humanity's resource use and its impact on global ecosystems is problematic. That's your start point. Climate change is a, cart before the horse situated political construct. So as a scientist or as an engineer, that's not the start point. The start point is something else. And when you start with that, of humankind's impact on planet Earth, there's plenty of more urgent and pressing issues on our ecosystems than atmospheric concentrations of CO2.
Yeah, wow. So what would you say is the number one issue? Would you be able to create a number one?
Well, the number one, and it's not with my soldier's hat on, as a soldier, I deal in facts and physics and priorities. I don't deal in wishful thinking.
Yeah.
So logically, mankind's increased use of resources and burning fossil fuels and so on is a direct reflection of our population growth. So logically, the very first solution would be saying, well, there's too many of us. And then that's an argument I'm not going to get into. But if I had to translate that into practical problems, well, some of the biggest problems in planet Earth at the moment are our food production, soil quality, degradation of soils, potable water, drinking water in third world countries. These are all far more pressing issues than slightly elevated levels of CO2, which, you know, a lot of scientists would say, well, actually, that's not a bad thing if you want to grow stuff. Yeah.
Well, I think that some of the research I was reading said that satellite photographs say that the Earth is about 13% greener now than it was in 1980.
Yeah.
And I think the carbon's gone from about 380 parts per million to about 420, 430 in that time. So that would indicate that slightly higher carbon, more greenery on the planet, better for food production.
That's right. And that's just simple carbon cycle science. So where do you start? Well, if we start with the political reality, the political reality is that climate change is real.
Yeah.
Discussing the fractions, the numbers, the percentages is really a waste of time because you can't, no scientist can prove anything in terms of causality.
Yeah.
All we can prove is that the history of, carbon says that, and the Earth's, meteorological history and so on, we've gone through hot bits, cold bits and so on, climate variability, whatever, push it all to one side. Let's just talk about improving our environment. And if we're talking about energy, well, my engineer brain says, well, I love efficiencies and we need to preserve our environment. We need to do all that kind of stuff. That's what we've got to do.
Yeah.
Right? But currently in most Western countries and for the last 20 years, public policy has been predicated on the ideology or the wishful thinking that just says, well, there's a thing called climate change and it's all caused by man burning fossil fuels. So therefore, let's all go off and build lots of solar farms and wind farms. And it's a cart before the horse.
Well, yeah, but also there's a profound level of hypocrisy there that just sort of makes my skin crawl. I was reading in The Australian only a couple of months ago, they were talking about clearing 700 acres of bushland in Queensland to put windmills up.
Yes.
And I thought, hang on a minute. Like, how does that work? Like, really? I mean, how can any person with just a fundamental level of intelligence look at that and not twist their own face up in disbelief?
Well, you're killing the environment to save it.
Yeah.
And you'll have one government department that spends its life preventing people, building things to save some koalas, and another government department approving a wholesale swathe of destruction through native habitat.
Yeah.
So, that's the politics of it. I live in northeast Victoria and driving up and down the Hume Highway in a place called Glenrowan, the world is covered in solar panels.
Yeah.
And that's mostly on good farming land.
Yeah.
And there's more proposed.
Yeah.
And this great big solar facility produces lots of electricity for, a few hours a day. But that facility makes more money. The owners of that facility make more money out of taxpayer support, but most particularly trading in carbon credits than they do actually out of electricity.
Wow.
Right. So all that farmland is lost to production, and farmland is not renewable.
No.
So we can go back and have a discussion about what renewable actually means. And there is a project that's been on the drawing board in the King Valley, which is a beautiful part of the world near where I am. Same thing, it's prime farmland, but the proponents of that project have other business interests in concrete. And they own that land and they want to put a great big PV farm on it because they need carbon credits to offset their cement business. So what's the driver of doing that? And the driver is not that someone needs that electricity or not that we need it there or anything else. It's because an investor needs the carbon credits for another purpose. Yeah. So this is, again, it's cart before the horse stuff.
Well, it's the behaviour of scoundrels, really, isn't it? There's not a genuine intention. It was very interesting. I caught up with a really good mate for lunch on the weekend, and he's all over this topic, and he's got a little farm out the back of Byron Bay, and we were sitting having a chat, and when we left to go home, my wife had only met him once or twice before, and she said to me something really beautiful. She said, Jamie has a level of sincerity that is so rare. And she said it's beautiful to talk to him because his sincerity just it creates deep comfort in the conversation. But then when we go from Jamie to what we list of politicians, there's no sincerity there at all.
Well, we could spend a very long time discussing this, I guess. But I'll say this, and I come from the right-hand side of politics. That's a pretty well-known fact. But I repeat what I said earlier. I'm someone who deals in facts, not fantasy.
Yeah.
When our energy minister or our prime minister stands on public television and says repeatedly, everyone knows that renewables are the cheapest form of energy, that is manifestly untrue.
Yeah.
They know it's untrue. Either that or they've got the dumbest advisors known to man, because it is simply not true.
Yeah.
Because politically you can twist things to suit yourself. So if you can say, well, last Thursday was really sunny and electricity was free across half the state for 2 hours, well, that's true. That's absolutely true, but it's not the whole truth.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So politicians, push agendas that suit their political purposes. But something I did a little exercise just to go slightly off the track, but you'll get the point. Last year I did a bit of research on the bodies that manage our electricity grid. Okay, and there's essentially 3 or 4 bodies depending how you look at it. There's the Australian Energy Regulator, there's the Australian Energy Market Commission, there's the Australian Energy Market Operator, and we throw in the Clean Energy Regulator. Now, each of those bodies have particular tasks, but collectively, those bodies are in charge of Australia's energy system, generating, transmitting, supplying electricity.
Yep.
Okay. Now, across those organisations, if you look at the boards, the chief executive officers and the chief operating officers, you'll find there's about 50 people, right, that are in that mix. Now, let's just say they all got sacked tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I said to you, John, you're now Australia's human resource manager, and I want you to hire 50 people to take over all those jobs in those 4 bodies. What sort of skill sets do you think you'd be looking for?
Oh, well, I'd be looking for people with a profound understanding of engineering across multiple engineering disciplines.
Yes, indeed.
I would also be looking for people who really do understand the climate on the planet. I'd be looking for people who have got a track record of high integrity leadership.
Yep.
Like that one would be huge. And hopefully they could bring the others together into a good working group. And then I would add to that people with a highly demonstrated skill in global economics and, again, integrity driven.
All right. Okay. Now, every time I pose this question to people, I think without exception, the first answer is, well, I think we'd be looking for a lot of people with engineering knowledge, because after all, it's all about building stuff and generating electricity and all that kind of stuff. Okay. I'm an engineer, so I'd agree with that. Well, I did an analysis of all those people, and I analysed all their credentials. And out of all those people, most of them have got some sort of tertiary qualification. Some have more than one. So I listed them all and added them all up. So the most common tertiary credential of all those 50 people is a Bachelor of Arts, followed by economics, followed by law.
Wow.
And across all those, and that's, I think, across about 60 or so credentials. Now, if you're looking for engineers, there's a total of about 5 engineering credentials, and I think only one for sure is electrical.
Wow.
And if you go to the AEMC, there's not a single technical credential. The AER, there's not a single one. The CER, there's not a single one. And if you look at the Council of Ministers, so you've got the Federal Energy Minister and the State Ministers and so on, and you're looking for technically qualified people, there aren't any. Our Federal Energy Minister has an economics degree. His deputy has I think an arts degree, something like that. But anyway, you're getting my point here.
Yeah.
And all those people are appointed by government.
It'd be like having a Formula One team with a bunch of lawyers to keep your engine running. Yeah?
But they wouldn't, because in a Formula One team, there's a very clear winning post. Yeah. There's a very clear outcome.
Yeah, right.
Whereas, but this isn't. And when you look at the CVs, and I'm sure a lot of these people are lovely people, very capable people, very smart people, but their CVs don't really stack up if you're a human resource manager.
Yeah.
And lost my train of thought here. Sorry, move on. Ask next question.
Because I was going to say, I think at one point the head of the Australian Energy Regulator body, the CEO, was an old Marsland boy.
Who was that?
Paul Fearon, I think.
Okay.
He was a few years older than us, but he was a mate of my brother's, so I knew him. But pretty sure it was Paul. But I think, mate, like I look at it, and you and I had a conversation last year, and you said to me, it's not about the environment, it's about the politics of the environment. And really, it's the politics of the environment that seem to have swept the Teals into office.
Yes.
Yeah? And I've got female friends who are convinced that the environment is collapsing. I think if you listen to Al Gore back in 1997, if his predictions came true, half of Florida would be underwater right now. But not only is it not underwater, there's still developments going on seaside, and insurance companies are insuring those developments. Now, insurance companies don't insure something where there's risk, but that belief of some sort of cataclysmic explosion is...
That's exactly right, John. And I saw something in one of the papers the other day, a woman journalist, I didn't read the story, but the headline was she made a conscious decision to not bring a child into a disintegrating world. Mm-hmm. But she did anyway out of sheer selfishness, something, whatever her rationale is. But I have to say, and, anybody who's listening, watching to this, that's just not the right reason to not have children. There is no climate cataclysm about to happen.
No.
There are others, right? And I say it is more likely that we'll be having significant conflict somewhere in the world on issues like water, for example.
Yeah.
All right? The planet is not going to die of carbon dioxide poisoning.
Yeah.
Let me assure you, right? That's just not the case. But look, it's politics, and it's an industry too, because you've got public policy settings that encourage investment, encourage Australia, whoever, to invest in all these things. But, I did a calculation on a PV farm, solar farm, where it's a $300 million investment. They're selling about $4.8 million worth of electricity for a few hours a day, and they're harvesting they're making about $6 million a year out of carbon credits.
Wow.
Okay, so something's really wrong.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just going to take the initiative here and just sort of jump a little bit.
Yeah, please.
If we say that climate catastrophism is part of its politics, that's what it's resulted in. So climate change is a political construct, and what we're seeing is political solutions that aren't based in first principles, science, engineering, or physics. And so the reasonable person would say, well, how can that be? And why don't we know about this? Well, the first thing I'd say is that it's complicated. Energy is not something everyone just understands.
Yeah.
But we've got politicians in a lot of countries, most Western countries, who have been operating on this principle that, and actually here in South Australia, the South Australian government, 10 or more years ago was simply saying, we're just going to shut power stations.
Yeah. And
the solutions will arrive. Well, I can tell you as an engineer, that's just not how life works, So, but how is it that this can be, this state of affairs? How can it be? Germany, one of the leaders in the green movement, that's where the Greens started, okay? They spent hundreds of billions of euros building monstrous offshore wind farms. It's been a disaster.
Yeah.
They had one of the big four firms do an audit on this a few years ago who said, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
There's wind droughts. Really? Well, that's a new expression, a wind drought. Well, that's right. The wind doesn't always blow, but let's call it a wind drought. So Germany has had the highest electricity cost in Europe. They are producing 20% less electricity now than they were 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And a strange coincidence, 20% of their manufacturing base is gone.
Yeah.
It's moved out of the country. Now, the Germans have acknowledged this. They're not sort of speaking publicly about it. Fortunately for them, the invasion of Ukraine really changed things in Europe. And so in Europe in particular, countries like Germany are suddenly quietly looking at reopening nuclear, and they're certainly reopening mothball power stations, coal stations, because that's a reality. Another country in Europe which has trumpeted its level of penetration of renewables is Ireland. They now have the most expensive energy, or most expensive electricity in Europe. So, and we're on that path. So we don't even need to do the sums. We've got examples.
Yeah.
So why are we doing this? And there's no easy answer to that.
No.
But I would point out, or what I say is the lexicon is part of the problem.
Yeah.
When Chris Bowen, our energy minister, gets up and says, renewables, terrific, perfect, whatever. What does he really mean? What's renewable? We commented on this a moment ago, but what's renewable? Well, that's a very good question. But some of the other common expressions, carbon cost, carbon footprint. Well, what does that mean? Because in fact, we need carbon. We are carbon. Everything's carbon. So a lot of these expressions, the power of words, affect people's perceptions.
Yeah.
And so going back all those years, and the Vice President of the United States makes a movie that says the world's about to end because of all these terrible things we're doing, and a lot of terminology gets coined and people believe it, but it doesn't line up with the facts.
Yeah, well, it's amazing how, global warming morphed into climate change. Yeah. And climate change is this term now that has, I think it creates a feeling more than a meaning.
Yes.
Yeah. And but it's a mythical term, because what in hell does that mean? The climate's changing all the time.
That's right.
I mean, we talked, you just touched on this, and I think it's a really potent area. Back in 2018, I went and did some speaking at a wind farm that they were building, Golden Wing wind farm at Glen Innes in New South Wales. And I walked onto the site, and there was this monstrous thing lying across the ground. And I said to the bloke, "What is that?" And he said, "Oh, that's one of the blades." And I said, "You're kidding." And I got my photograph taken next to this blade, and I show it to people, and people leave their bodies when they see it. But that blade was only 65 metres long. They're much longer now. And for those who don't know, if you lay one of those blades down on a rugby league field, you wouldn't be able to see the field. It would cover the whole field. That's how big they are.
Yes.
And they've got a lifespan of 20 to 25 years.
Yes.
So they've got to be replaced.
Yes.
Now, up until recently, they haven't been recyclable. So they cut them up and bury them in the ground. Like, who wants that? Sometimes they just dump them. I'm amazed they haven't been dumping them in the ocean, or maybe they have been. But people who look at this and say that's renewable, well, yeah, it has to be renewed every 20 years.
That's right. And look, just a quick anecdote. About 2 years ago, I was walking down the street. It was early on a Sunday morning in Melbourne, and there was a small group of people who were doing something anyway, but they had a couple of Tesla vehicles plugged into recharging points outside a public building. And I was waiting for someone, and this woman was standing there, and she said, "Hello." Yeah, I got chatting, and I said, "Oh, so one of these cars is yours?" She said, "Is that one, the red one, or whatever?" And I said, "Oh, and this was a woman who she would have been 60s, I suppose, well-educated, and and a nice person." and she's very pleased with her EV. And then she made the fatal mistake of saying, making a comment about, reducing humanity's carbon footprint or, saving whatever. And I said to her, I looked at my watch, which I didn't have on, but, I said, Madam, you do realise your car is currently being charged with brown coal electricity. And she looked at me, she said, don't be ridiculous. I said, I can assure you at this time of the morning, it's cloudy, overcast and drizzling. There's no solar energy going into the grid and there's no wind anywhere. So there's no wind. This is being charged from your lawn, Latrobe Valley. And she said, that's the trouble with you people. You're just fixated and blah, blah, blah. Well, I know what I'm talking about, obviously. But what I was really struck with is, going back to this, it's a vibe, it's a perception. Mm-hmm. It's not facts.
Yeah.
And there's a thing I think I like to call now greenwishing. Mm-hmm. Greenwishing, which is where you just wish it will happen and it will happen.
Yeah.
Right. But the engineering doesn't.
It's not there. Well, I was listening to Bjorn Longberg from Denmark.
Yes. Sweden.
An economist and who's one of the world leaders in sort of the economic analysis of this whole thing. And he talks about how, it's supply of natural gas to third world communities that brings them out of poverty.
Yes.
And anyway, he was saying that and you would know a lot more about this, but if the world decided that it was going to go full tilt on all of its plans to remove everything to, solar, wind, batteries, the whole lot, there just is not enough copper anywhere on planet Earth, nowhere near enough copper to achieve all of that. So it's not possible to achieve it.
No. Well, as I said earlier, this idea of net zero, it is not achievable.
Yeah.
The resources aren't there. They just aren't. And let me try and explain why, and I'll touch a little bit too on costs.
Yeah.
So people say, what does electricity actually cost? Okay. Well, when the sun is shining, the variable cost of generating a megawatt of electricity out of solar panels is zero.
Yeah.
So if you've got a big solar facility, it can generate all this electricity and it can power, tens of thousands of homes for a few hours.
Yep.
Okay. There's still a fixed cost, and I referred to one earlier. A $300 million facility can power something like 20,000 homes for 4 hours a day. Okay. Well, if we said, right, we want to power those same homes completely on solar energy, completely, what would that take? Well, even just very broadly rule of thumb, you would have to increase the generating capacity by a factor of at least 4 and probably 5 or 6 to allow for, weather and all the rest of it. So you have to build, let's say, 6 times as many solar panels, cover 6 times as much farmland. That's just for a start. Then you'd have to put in hundreds of megawatt hours of, probably gigawatt hours of storage, right? And then you start talking about billions of dollars worth of batteries.
Yeah.
Now, I worked out, and by the way, that's for 20 years.
Yeah.
Except that the big batteries, the lithium batteries, have only got a life of usefully practically about 10 years.
Yeah, right.
But let's just say it's all a 20-year, whatever. I worked out to do that would cost the average household, can't remember now, it was well over $1 million each.
Wow.
Over 20 years.
Wow.
Right? So why is it? Okay, but isn't sunshine free and wind is free? Well, yeah, but this is the problem. It's intermittent. Mm-hmm. When our energy minister says, everyone knows renewables are the cheapest form of energy, he's lying because he's using the word renewables. Yeah. Because that doesn't mean anything. The word he should be using, with my engineer's hat on, is intermittence. Yep. Because electricity and electricity generation is a very specific thing. Mm. And electricity needs to be produced in just the right quantities at just the right time, and it only exists on the moment. And so there's quite an engineering task there. Yeah. Well, as soon as you take out the spinning baseload that can be relied upon to do that.
Which is coal.
Yeah, anything that's spinning, but it includes hydro as well. Then anything else is, as an engineer would look at it and say, that's intermittent. Yeah. So when a politician says renewable, what he or she is really saying is it's intermittent. Well, intermittent means it goes like this.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's here and sometimes it's at zero.
Which our grid's not built for, right?
Not originally, no.
No.
So one of the great tasks of grid management these days is the practice of firming, where you've got lots of people in rooms with computers and monitors and everything else. And what they're busy doing is managing all these inputs from everywhere to try and keep things balanced, right? And if things get out of balance, suddenly the cloud comes over somewhere and 30 megawatts drops out, well, we've got to suddenly quickly try and fix that. And if you can't fix it instantly, what happens is the system starts to shut down. Now, we've had a bit of this, and where I live in regional Victoria, this happens reasonably frequently.
Right.
Power goes off.
Wow.
Right? And the power goes off because a big PV facility suddenly, unexpectedly gets cloud over it. And so part of the system shuts down, and that trips out because then demand increases on other supply, and then things start to trip out all the way back to the coal power station.
Right.
Right. So, okay. So to firm your system properly, you need all this extra stuff.
Yeah.
The more solar panels you have, the more batteries you need. Right. And how useful are batteries? Well, the big battery at Renewable near Geelong cost, I think about $400 million. A
Right.
few years ago to put that in. It's got normally about a 400 megawatt storage. Okay, so that's $1 million a megawatt storage.
Yeah.
It can only dispatch at about 300 megawatts, so it can't even push it all out at one hit. But even if it could, it would keep Melbourne going for about 5-10 minutes. Okay. But that's not its function, really. Its function is firming.
Yeah.
It takes, whatever. But it's only got a life of 10 years.
Yeah.
And then all that lithium and all that everything, it's all got to be
disposed of.
All done again. So it's a fantasy.
So just quickly, before you jump into that, how do they dispose of that battery?
Can't answer that yet.
Right. Okay.
But one thing I will tell you, in my area, I'm a volunteer bushfire fighter. One thing we don't do is we don't go anywhere near battery fires, EV fires. Can't put them out.
Yeah.
So how much does electricity cost? Well, look, there's a fair amount of research that basically says that the higher the level of intermittence in a grid, the unit cost per megawatt hour increases by exponentially. And I've seen some studies which say that if you went all the way to 80%, you'd be paying, I think it's 8 times the amount per megawatt than if you were just using existing systems now.
Wow.
And that's because of the cost of all those batteries and all those extra generators and all those extra gas peaking plants, all this sort of stuff you've got to have so that you can say, oh, yes, we've got renewables in the grid. Well, you haven't really.
No. Do you know what's hilarious, though? You just reminded me of something. So I was born on a cattle station out about 50 k's out of Roma in Queensland. My grandparents owned it. My parents were managing it. And when I was 3.5, they sold up. So my parents took their inheritance and bought a dairy farm outside Toowoomba. And when we arrived at that dairy farm, it didn't have grid power. So we had this box attached to the back of the house that was full of car batteries with a diesel generator next to it.
Yes.
So our house was actually battery driven.
Yes.
So my dad would fire up the generator, charge the batteries, and that would keep us going for however long. And then I remember the days that are like the romanticism for a 5-6-year-old little boy, these trucks coming through these massive rolls of cable and putting the power lines in and eventually bringing power to our house. I mean, it was an amazing time, but now we've got people wanting to go back to batteries.
Well, not wanting to, they either think they should.
Yeah.
But here's something for you. Out in the Western District of Victoria, where a lot of the original wind farms were plonked, not because we needed them there, but there was economic incentive to do so. Farmers out there, especially the dairy people and others, have all invested heavily in diesel generators.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Because they can't rely on, you can't have your power going out halfway through a milking session.
No, exactly.
And it's the same with businesses. I spoke to someone recently in my part of the world who spent, I think, $250,000 putting solar panels on the roof of their warehouse and factory, but still finished up spending, I think, about $50,000 on diesel generators.
Yeah, wow.
Because they can't afford to have blackouts. And going back to the nomenclature and the lexicon, the authorities are pretty good at coming up with good names. Uh-huh. So now we call what do they call these blackouts? Selective. I'm sorry, the term escapes me, but it's a euphemism for it's a blackout.
Blackout.
We had was it last year? I think we had one. It was about 12 hours. Right, it was about 12 hours. And when the power's out, all my electric fences go down. Uh-huh. I've got no water to the house because the pump doesn't work, or the troughs or anything else for that matter, and so on and so forth. But since the very big solar array opened up near me, I've had to replace about $20,000 worth of electrical equipment, which has been, and I've had to put surge protection on the house because of the whatever. So.
It's amazing. You just reminded me of something there about nomenclature and the terms that they create. About I think 2018, I had to go to Sydney to do some seminars on the light rail project up there for all the workers, and they took me for a walk down on site, George Street, and I said to the bloke, "Mate, light rail, this is a tram." And he goes, "Shh. You can't say tram in Sydney."
That's the politics.
It was amazing. But I wanted to, you're a farmer and I'm I've been a nutritionist and I'm very much into food and food sovereignty and good food, and I'm a big fan of Bobby Kennedy and the work he's trying to do to clean up America's food, which is horrendous. But a few years back, I think 3 years ago, I sat down and I just started using AI and web searches and I wanted to write an essay comparing the whole carbon equation. So I picked up somewhere that the government wanted to reduce carbon emissions by something like 115 megatons per year. And so I thought, okay, so let's have a look at how much of these renewables we'd have to install, power, solar, wind, to achieve that. And what's the cost of that? And so we looked at all of that and did the numbers and worked it out and came up with a figure for the initial capital cost and then the ongoing replacement costs. And then I said, okay, so let's have a look now if we were to convert all of Australia's farmland to no-till regenerative, because a lot of my listeners wouldn't know that when you plough the soil, you release carbon. But when you plant food, carbon is the food and it takes the carbon out of the air. So we looked at all that, regenerative agriculture, but also looking at grazing patterns to stop hooved animals tearing the ground up as much. And we worked out that if all of that available land in Australia was converted to no-till regenerative agriculture, the savings would have been 105 megatons per annum. So 10 megatons less in saving, and the cost was like this compared to this. And we would have all had organic food.
Yes, I won't debate you on that. I'm not really across that. But I can tell you that one of the biggest problems facing agriculture worldwide is soil quality.
Yeah.
And we desperately need to put more carbon back into the soil.
Yeah.
Now, this raises another issue, and this is an aspect of the whole energy debate that is completely absent from the public eye, and that is the general question of what I would call carbon industry. Now, when you push it a bit, people suddenly realise that, we look around us and just about everything in this room is made of carbon, and most of it comes from the carbon industry, plastics, synthetics and all that kind of stuff. But things like fertilisers. Now, urea, one of the biggest fertilisers that we use globally. How does that get made? Well, it gets made from ammonia. How does ammonia get made? It gets made from hydrogen.
Yeah.
How does hydrogen get made? It gets made from natural gas or coal.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, solar panels and wind turbines and even hydro, which I'm a big fan of, none of those things contribute to carbon industry.
Yeah.
Right. So this is, and we desperately need new fertiliser solutions, including organic fertilisers. And the only way we're going to get them is from fossil fuels.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say we have to burn them. We don't have to burn them. We just simply have to chemically reform them.
Yeah.
But this is one of the hidden aspects of this whole debate that is not front and centre. No. It should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, I agree with you. I think that there's some, the left side of politics keeps accusing the right side of politics of being basically the bitches of the petrol and oil industries, but they've become someone else's bitch.
Yes. Oh, that's right. Yeah, no, that's
windmills
exactly right.
and the solar. And so these other vital areas are not getting any airplay, they're getting ignored. And it's to our own detriment. And see, as a man who's I'm similar age to you, because we're in school together, mid-60s, I feel I have a responsibility to the emerging generations. What are we going to leave for them? And I don't think windmill garbage is ideal. I mean, they're not like railway sleepers that you can use to tear your garden,
No, and that's not the only thing though. Our generation, we should be not fixing things. And I don't think that's right. Our generation, the boomers, cop a lot of criticism that we've created this mess and we all got rich on it. That's not quite true. I mean, the benefits to civilization of what's happened with technology in the last 50, 60, 70 years, is unbelievable. There's more people out of poverty now than, and so on and so forth. What we owe to our next generations is a far better solution to what we're imposing now. And what we're imposing now with this renewable nonsense, it is a catastrophe. It's a national catastrophe.
Yeah.
And for Australia, our strategic circumstances haven't changed for 200 years.
No.
We are an island nation at the end of a very long maritime supply line. We are not energy independent. We're not fertiliser independent.
No.
So... and I don't know what the solution is, and I get this question plenty. I spend hours explaining these things to people. So, Greg, how can we fix this? Well, there's no easy fix because the way our political system is, the self-interest of the people who are in Parliament, there's no easy fix. And I can tell you the brief time I spent in Parliament confirmed one thing for me, that there's virtually no one in the Parliament at the federal level and probably the state levels as well that has much of an idea of all the stuff that we've just been talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's heartbreaking, isn't it? But, that's why I believe that, collectively men have got to stand up a lot more and give themselves understanding and knowledge so that they can have conversations, so that they can challenge politicians, so that they can challenge media. I mean, because, really I think the media in this country are sort of really following a sort of globalist agenda and not really, they're not covering the real issues at all.
That's right. I think that's the subject of another podcast, but you're absolutely right. Mainstream media is hostage to social media trends these days.
Yeah.
And if to me, and this is a related but separate issue, is if the average Australian says, well, I want to go somewhere where I can find the truth and all the answers, I don't know where to point you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. Well, but I think that, as we sort of draw to the end of our time, there's something you said earlier, and I'd love you to sort of reiterate a little bit, because you said that if we're going to go to 80% and look at all the stuff that we need to create to do that, and it's only going to be 20 years worth, mineral-wise on the planet, it's not possible. But are people hearing that?
No.
Like, are people actually hearing when Chris Bowen is saying, oh, we're doing this is great, we're going to meet our targets? He's bullshitting because he knows he's trying to tell you that he's building a car, but he knows he's got no wheels.
Something like that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can come up with a better metaphor, but no, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
No, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, he's a professional politician, has always been. He did an economics degree. What does he know about the engineering of electrical systems and so on?
Yeah.
Nothing. But he's got people who do. He's got advisors who do.
Yeah.
So when he stands up and tells the Australian people what he tells them, he knows. He is lying.
Yeah.
And he would say, oh no, because when politicians get accused of lying, what they're really saying is, no, I was being economical with the truth, or, I wasn't talking, whatever. But he's lying. And the consequences, the stakes here are immense.
Yeah.
Right? Now, 4 years ago, the Chinese government got in a tiff with something our Prime Minister said. And they basically made life hard for us for a while. Stopped unloading iron ore ships, various other things.
Cut off wine.
Yeah, and one of the things they did was stopped sending us urea. And we stopped making urea years ago. The consequence of that was that our national trucking fleet and national heavy transport fleet came within weeks of stopping completely.
Wow.
Because years ago, in another fit of political benevolence to the environment, it was decided that all heavy trucks, heavy diesels, had to be fitted with a particulate removal system, which requires a thing which in this country we call AdBlue. Mm-hmm. Right? It's a liquid that trucks put in a little tank, and what it does, it removes particulate emissions out of trucks. Okay. So AdBlue, you might have seen it at service stations. They say AdBlue. So it's just a liquid. What is it? It's simply a urea and water solution.
Right.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
Right? And urea is actually quite easy to make. Where do we get urea? Oh, we buy it from China.
Yeah.
Oh, how do the Chinese make it? They take our coal, they gasify it,
Yeah.
they make hydrogen, then they make ammonia, then they make urea, and then they send it to us. And we make AdBlue and put it in the trucks. The net result is trucks reduce their solid emissions a fair bit, okay, but not the greenhouse gas emissions. But back in China, meantime, where they made it, there's lots of emissions.
Yeah.
The net equation in greenhouse gases and effect on the environment is crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so all our heavy trucks need AdBlue. They must have AdBlue because that's the way they're made now.
Yeah.
If they don't have AdBlue, they can't run.
Yeah.
So when the Chinese got a hissy fit, we couldn't make urea. And that's before you even get to the fertiliser.
Yeah.
For all the crops that we put in to grow the food that we eat. Now, this is a reminder of how vulnerable we are in this country. But it's like bushfires actually, that while it's happening, we're all very, very agitated. We're very, very exercised by it.
Yeah.
Until it stops happening, and then we all forget about it until next time.
Yeah.
And that is the thing. We never learn our lessons permanently. The accountants come in, the politicians come in. No, we have to, don't worry about that. Don't waste money on that. We'll do something else until the next bushfire or the next embargo or whatever it is. And I think, what is there, 3 weeks of liquid fuel supply in this country at any particular time?
Yeah, well, that part, and we learned that when the Straits of Hormuz were closed.
Yes. And
we hit a bit of a wall because we realised we've gone from 6 petrochemical plants down to 2 and they can't supply. We've got to import 80% of our fuel. But then it's really interesting, just very recently, Trump has put the Australian government in a very awkward position where I think he's almost trying to force them to upset the Chinese.
Probably.
because America's got very strict rules over importing foods or any products that have used forced labour.
Yes.
And Albanese stood up and said, we've got the strictest laws, but we actually haven't. No. Our laws are terrible. And we're importing goods that are used forced labour. And so Trump's trying to push us to push back against China, which could be catastrophic for us if we do. So that to me says that, again, as a man standing in this country, what do we do to give away our sovereignty the way that we have, that we can't produce enough of our own energy supplies? And people are so caught up in this whole thing of shutting down coal and shutting down oil, petroleum, yet just 2025, China commissioned 300 brand new coal-fired power stations.
That's right.
And India commissioned 50 of them.
That's right.
And so...
And we're sending them the coal to burn.
We're sending them the coal. And it's like we've got all this amazing uranium sitting in the ground And Dutton was right, but he didn't know how to sell it.
No.
And we could go nuclear over the next 20 years and have the cleanest energy on the planet and the cheapest energy on the planet.
Yes. Look, I know we're probably getting to the end of our time, so a question that someone listening to this might say, well, yeah, so what are your solutions? Well, there's lots of solutions if there's political will, but I'll just give you my, Greg's view of where this needs to be.
Please.
At the moment, while our current government is saying, oh, yes, net zero, renewables and so on, here, have some more subsidies and so on, at the same time, they're slipping hundreds of millions of dollars out the back door to coal power stations to keep them open because that's the reality.
Yeah.
So what does the future look like? Look, nuclear is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It is just a no-brainer, right? You're right. Peter Dutton was sort of on the right tram, but yeah, I spoke to him at length actually about this very issue. And I urged him to go with a broader policy rather than just be Mr. Nuclear.
Yep.
His view was, no, this is politics. We've got to keep it simple. But what I would see at a political end, if I were advising the current federal government or the next federal government or the next state government, we've got an election coming up here in Victoria, I would be saying to government, get rid of the climate change ministry, rebadge it, retask it, and call it the Ministry for Energy and Environmental Security.
Yeah, great.
Now, you do that, and what that suddenly does, it opens up the science and the realities. There are certain realities. We are stuck with coal for a while. Yes, gas, good. Gas only produces about half the CO2. But where are we going energy-wise? As I say, nuclear is a bit of a no-brainer, especially in this country. But nuclear is not a complete solution worldwide for lots of reasons, So my prediction, and it's also based on just the necessary science, we will be going to what I would call biomass conversion systems, which is where – because another huge problem we have in the world is waste.
Yeah.
Right, waste. And you hear about waste-to-energy plants. Again, feel-good stuff, but they don't make much electricity.
Yeah.
And they're all dirty.
Yeah.
They're not really working. But biomass conversion, the chemistry of that is actually pretty straightforward. And if you go to chemical conversion of biomass, and biomass includes coal, right, as well as waste, plastics, all that kind of stuff, biomass conversion can be done in such a way that the chemical energy you get out of that, and this is just basic chemistry, is many multiples of what you get out of it if you burn it.
Yeah, right.
Okay. And I predict we'll be going down that path to a fair degree because we also need the carbon industry that comes from that because those processes also make fertilisers. And one of the things that those processes make is green methanol.
Right.
Now, China has already decided that green methanol is likely the liquid fuel of the future. They've already made that decision.
Right.
And one of their provinces, they're opening up methanol gas stations.
Wow.
Right? Because internal combustion engines will happily run on methanol.
Yeah.
Where do you get methanol? You make it out of chemical conversion of fossil fuels.
Right.
Right? And if you do it, you can do it cleanly and you don't use as much of it. It's a bit of a no-brainer. So, yes, the Chinese are opening up all these new coal power stations, but they're also committed to doing things like shutting down their coking plants for the steel industry. They're committed to methanol. So, and leading into that, my prediction is that the future of the car won't be electric. Electric vehicles have a place, but not as a one-for-one replacement of what we're used to.
Yep.
Heavy transport still needs internal combustion engines. I don't care what anyone says about electric trucks. So liquid fuels will be with us, but they're likely it'll be methanol or even ammonia powered.
Yeah,
Same
right.
for shipping. And I think one of the sleepers on energy going forward is probably geothermal, which is using underground heat.
Yep.
And the only thing that's holding that technology back is something pretty basic, which is our drilling technology, which is the ability to go down and sideways. So that's where the future lies. And so right now, We've got politicians throwing tons and tons of taxpayer dollars to destroy our energy system, destroy our manufacturing sector, and make this country far less capable in a sovereign sense. What's the responsibility of us, you and me and our generation? It's to try and turn that around.
Yeah. Great point to finish on, mate. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We learned a lot today.
Good.
And hopefully we've helped some of my viewers, listeners, and maybe we'll do it again because we didn't even get to talk about data centres.
No.
So thanks, everyone. I'll put links in the show notes, and please gear yourself up on this topic and keep educating yourself so that you understand, so that when you're listening to the politicians speak and you're watching their mouth, you're also watching what their hands are doing. Very, very important. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, John.